and welcome to our podcast on rhetoric. We are offering a short introduction to what rhetoric is, why it matters, and how we can be better analysts of it, and also better creators of it. So let's go ahead and see what we're talking about. So what exactly is rhetoric? Rhetoric is the art of using language effectively or persuasively. And so writing and speaking in a way that causes people to actually want to pay attention and listen to what one has to say. So when we are the analysts of communication, we're going to be analyzing how effective was that speaker in crafting a message? How persuasive was he or she? And then on the flip side, when we are the speaker or the writer ourselves, we are going to seek to be exceptionally credible and put together very cohesive arguments so that we can be effective in our communication. Rhetoric, in essence, does help persuade people to our cause. Now, if we're simply writing an academic essay, our cause is very basic. We would like the audience to think that our interpretations have merit, that they are potentially valid. There's nothing to physically do with that other than believe us or think that our argument has merit. But perhaps we could be crafting an argument where we're seeking to persuade people to go to war, buy a product, or don't buy that product. And so our ability to master the art and science of rhetoric will help us be more effective in our communication. And so at its essence, when we communicate, we seek to persuade people. And so persuasion is at its root. We can then take this and split it up into two common ways that persuasion occurs. One is through the idea of advertising. Now, the word advertising has a relatively neutral connotation. People hear that and they don't freak out. They don't say, oh yes, clearly that advertisement is out to get me today, and this is a very negative and shady idea. And so the word itself has a very neutral connotation. It's not overly positive or overly negative in terms of persuading through advertising. But then we have the word propaganda. Propaganda is the idea of persuading also. But the word propaganda has a very negative connotation. So when people say, oh, that was pure propaganda, they're admitting that something was trying to be persuasive, but they're saying that it was a very negative source of communication. But both advertising and propaganda do seek to persuade people, whether it's to buy a product, buy more of a product, stop buying another product, or perhaps in the form of propaganda posters, get people to go to war, or not go to war, or stop sharing secrets, or getting more women into the factories during World War II. At their root, both advertising and propaganda both seek to persuade, and so they also need to be very clear in their communication and be strong in the art of rhetoric. So why is rhetoric and knowledge of the skill of rhetoric important? If we are reading or analyzing a text, from that point of view, we want to make sure that we understand what the message is saying. Should we believe that message? Is the speaker being credible? Should I be persuaded to complete the action that is being asked of me? And so from an analysis point of view, we have to look at the messages coming to us and decide, are they credible? Have they truly persuaded me to act? Then on the flip side, when we are the writer or we are the speaker, we have to ensure that we are communicating as effectively and as persuasively as possible. We do want to be listened to. We do want to get what we want. We do want people to either buy our product or believe that our essay has some merit. And so we want to understand the art of rhetoric, both from an analysis point of view, so we can understand the messages coming at us, but also from a creation point of view, so that when we are creating messages, we can be as effective as possible. And so this is the model we use when we try to decipher communication or messages. We call it the rhetorical triangle because it has 3 sides, 3 angles, and it's a nice structure for us to use and start to deconstruct any messages that are either coming at us or messages that we are creating out there. So we want all 3 of these points, the speaker, the subject, and the audience, all to be aligned properly. We want all to be working in concert, working together. And if all 3 are in tune and all 3 are working in the same direction, then we have effective communication. If any one of those points isn't in line, then that message is not going to be clear. It's not going to be as effective as it possibly could be. But this is our base model of our rhetorical triangle. If we take a step up and start adding the words that we're going to be using for this presentation onto this model, we add the words of ethos, logos, and pathos. And these relate to the 3 points that we just mentioned. For a speaker or writer to be credible, he or she will seek to have ethos. And we'll talk more about that in a second. If we're talking about a subject, we're probably going to appeal to the brain. We're going to use logic or logos to try and be persuasive. From the recipient's point of view, from the audience's point of view, we're going to appeal to emotion. We're going to make them happy in order to persuade them, or scare them, or make them sad. And so we're going to appeal to pathos, which are arguments based on emotion. So let's look at each one of those in a little bit more depth. The top of our triangle was the idea of ethos, and a synonym for that is credibility. When we are analyzing text, we are looking at the credibility of the speaker. How believable is that person? Should we listen to him or her? Should we do what he or she wants us to because they are worthy of our respect? Or are they coming at us and we don't really trust them? They have diminished ethos. And so credibility is a really abstract concept. And it's the idea of being able to believe someone. And so think about people in our lives who share messages with us. Do they have good believability or good credibility? And therefore, do they have good ethos? Think about your teachers and coaches. Do you trust what they're saying? Do they seem to be credible in what they know and the message they're trying to share with you? Or do they seem to be off in the weeds trying to manipulate you in some evil way? Hopefully, teachers and coaches have pretty good ethos. They're very credible in what they do. How about your parents? Same way, we would hope that when they say things that we should probably want to believe them because they are credible sources in our lives. But then think about this. What about presidential candidates? What about commercials? Do we truly believe the messages from these speakers? What about them improves their credibility or ethos? What do they do that really makes us want to believe them? At the same time, what do they do that diminishes their ethos? Are there certain behaviors they have, certain mannerisms, certain things that they do, and to either engage our ability to listen to them or cause them to lose ethos or credibility? And so as we are analyzing text, how do these speakers or writers gain credibility? Well, they know the topic. Ideally, they are an expert on something. They have some experience with this topic. I'm going to listen to a first-year instructor on a topic much, much differently than I'm going to listen to a 20-year veteran on that same topic. Somebody who's been around the block a few times probably has better credibility, has better ethos. Just personally, when you have people who follow through on promises, people who are honest, we like that. We probably want to listen to what they have to say. So if they are going to share a message with us, then we're probably going to listen more intently, and there's a greater chance that we might be persuaded by this because the speaker, the top part of our rhetorical triangle, has increased ethos. They have good credibility on this subject, and that helps make their communication more effective. So when we are analyzing our speakers and their ethos, think about this. Think about certifications they might have, or perhaps even awards that they have won. Are all speakers created equally? Or are some more credible based on the fact that they have attained additional certification above the norm? Are some teachers more credible than others? Why is that? What makes them so? Is it because they've been doing it longer? Is it because they are national board certified, which is a process where they submit a body of evidence to show that they are better than average in reaching students and conveying knowledge? If you're listening to a teacher, do they have increased ethos if they have more certifications? Over on the right-hand side, what if a certain speaker or writer has certain awards attributed to them? What if that author who's crafting that argument has won a Nobel Prize in that field? What if that person is talking about the art of writing and they have won a Pulitzer Prize for writing? Do they have more credibility? Not just because people have certifications and awards doesn't mean that they are perfect. They can certainly make mistakes. But when we start to assess the ethos of a speaker, these are other tools we can look at to figure out if we should or should not be listening to this person with the same ear. Number 2, the idea of logos, the bottom right point of our triangle. This is the idea of trying to persuade through the use of reasoning or logic, basically appealing to the brain. So when we see arguments that are crafted with dates, details, examples, facts, they are appealing to our brain to try to convince us of something. They might be trying to make a persuasive argument, and they're going to inundate us with facts and numbers. Those are hard to argue with. It's definitely building a credible argument through a logical appeal. So they might use things like, is it cheaper? Is it faster? Is it smaller? Is it more efficient? If I'm looking at two products and I'm deciding which one to buy on Amazon, and one is $500 and one is $400, well, logically, why would I want to spend $500 on the same exact product? Logically, I'm going to go with the one that is cheaper. That appeals to my brain. It persuades me in a logical fashion. How about a car? How about being more fuel efficient? When I look at a car and there's a sticker on the window that says the Hummer gets like 5 miles to the gallon, or the Prius gets about a bazillion miles to the gallon, if fuel efficiency is something I care about, it's hard to argue with those numbers. Why would I choose the Hummer that is exceptionally not fuel efficient when I could choose the Prius? That is a very logical argument, and it is very persuasive because it is appealing through stats and figures and working through my brain. For example, look at some of these print ads. You see a lot of facts and figures on them. 1 in 5. It's hard to argue with that. There is a statistic. You could be looking at that going, wow, that's 20%. And you could be thinking that is a lot. Maybe I should do something about this. The water ad in the bottom left. 2,000 more steps to work off this water because it has calories in it. That's very logical. If my goal is to reduce my caloric intake, why would I want to increase it through the use of a certain type of water? That seems silly. So very logically, I'm going to choose what they are selling rather than this other brand. Saving 15% on my insurance. That is a hard number. That is very logical. If I'm out to save money on this process, and that is a criteria that appeals to me, there it is. It's a very logical appeal to my brain. 15%. That might be $15 less. That could be $45 less. That's a number I can wrap my brain around. It's very persuasive through the use of logos or logic. The third point of our rhetorical triangle is the idea of pathos, or persuading through the use of emotional appeals. These appeal to the heart. They appeal to our emotion. They're very intangible. They're hard to put your finger on because they're so amorphous and emotionally based. So perhaps we're going to see communication that uses vivid, concrete descriptions and figurative language to really touch our heart, to make us feel something. And because we feel something, we might do something. Again, whether it's as simple as believing them or actually going out and doing something. So consider propaganda posters from World War II. All seem to be playing on emotions, using those pathos appeals. The bottom left, you talk of sacrifice. He knew the meaning of sacrifice. Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, you're right. I thought I was doing something good for the war effort. I thought I was sacrificing so that the war effort could go better, but I'm not sacrificing as much as this guy did. I'll do more. How much more? Hard to say. It's not rational. There isn't a number on there, but it clearly taps into our emotions. It makes us want to do more. Bottom right, deliver us from evil. Buy war bonds. A clear emotional appeal. We have the dark, foreboding clouds. We have the Nazi swastika. We have the pathetic, sad-looking child in front of there. It appeals to our emotions. Man, I certainly don't want her to get hurt anymore because of those darn Nazis from World War II. I want to do something. Man, what could I do? Oh, there it is at the bottom. I could buy war bonds. It doesn't tell me how much they are. It doesn't tell me exactly how much it's going to help the war effort. It doesn't tell me how long this is going to take. It's not appealing on logic. It is appealing through emotion. I feel sad. I feel drawn. My heartstrings have been played upon. I'm going to buy this because of emotional appeals created by that poster. And so again, here is our model. Our speakers at the top, our subjects in the bottom right, our audiences in the bottom left. If all three are working in tune, then effective communication will be achieved. If we add in those Greek-based words of ethos, logos, and pathos, we look at the speaker's credibility. We look at the appeals to logic. We look at the appeals to emotion. And again, if all of those are finely tuned and in the proper way, then effective communication can occur. So that's about it for our introduction to rhetoric. You can certainly dive into more depth with all of this, but the basic format of that rhetorical triangle is what we want us to look at right now. If we are analyzing messages, we can break that message into 3 parts: the ethos, the logos, and the pathos. And then vice versa. When we are creating our messages, we want to make sure that we are credible sources of information. We also want to make sure that our logical appeals truly are correct and fact-based. And then we want to look at our emotional appeals. How are we appealing to the emotions or the heartstrings of our audience? And if all 3 points of our triangle are finely tuned, then we have a better chance of communicating clearly, getting our message across, and being more persuasive overall. As always, thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, please bring those in the class. We'll get those answered, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much.